Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Listen, today I have a special bonus episode for you. I got a chance to catch up with John Allen, who, along with Andrea Allen, are the co-founders of Onyx Coffee Lab. And Onyx is certainly one of the brightest stars in the business landscape here in Northwest Arkansas for a variety of reasons. We previously featured John Allen on episode 36 of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast, but we thought we'd bring him back on just to kind of check in with him and find out how things are going in this new normal that we find ourselves in. And he had some interesting information to share with us. The great thing is that he hasn't let anybody go, but it hasn't been business as usual. Some parts of the business are up, other parts are down. They have increased their capacity to handle traffic coming to their walk-up locations at all four of the Onyx facilities. And they're still baking some of those amazing blueberry muffins, which, man, if you haven't had one, you need to check it out. But, I just really wanted you to hear from John, understand exactly what they're doing, how COVID-19 has not only affected them, but also affected those that grow their coffee. And, sometimes I don't think we think about all of the different ramifications that play into how this pandemic is affecting us, not just here in the States, but elsewhere. And this is just a far-ranging conversation that I had with John. He is a really great guy. And I got to tell you, folks, I cannot wait until the day that we get back to some type of normal where I can go back up there and cup some coffee with him and try out some of the stuff that those guys are putting out on a regular basis. But if anybody has learned to pivot, John Allen and Andrea and the rest of the team at Onyx Coffee Lab have learned how to do that. Check out this episode, this bonus episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk with you soon. Cue the music.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Without further ado, here's our fearless host, Randy Wilburn.
I've been checking in with some people that had been on the podcast previously, as well as some new business owners and others, just to kind of see how the pandemic, how they're dealing with it. And, I wanted to just kind of see how things have been. We've been about 2 months into this now, and I know that things aren't business as usual. And I know that, everybody has had to modify how they do things, but I was just curious as to how the coffee lab was holding up and what have you guys done to kind of pivot in this new normal?
Yeah. The sort of a lot of different things, because the different facets we kind of work in within business have been changing. I mean, with the physical brick and mortars, we pretty much converted everything into sort of walk-up windows right away.
Yeah.
And that's actually been going pretty good. We've good enough that we're actually not, we're one of the few that haven't chose to reopen, despite the ruling that we can, just because we feel like we're at a sustainable place. And yeah, we just didn't want I just don't want Onyx to be associated, I think, with sterile rubber gloves and masks. And we're a very community-based cafe in our brick and mortar settings. And if we can't pile in a bunch of people and have artists and workers and I don't know, just the whole environment that we want in there, I think I'd rather just let people do takeaway. And so from a brick and mortar standpoint, we're sort of going to just stay put unless, something dramatic changes. We're at a sustainable place for the cafes, and we'll probably continue until they allow us to do like full service and everything is safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
From a roasting standpoint, that's probably been the biggest change, just because our main focus was roasting for other high-end cafes and restaurants and things like that. And most of those have closed down, especially because our focus is more either on the coasts or international. And so we've probably seen an 80% reduction in our wholesale.
Wow.
Over the last 2 months, with the hope that a lot of those will reopen soon. But our e-commerce has grown by 20 times, and so strangely enough, we're sort of roasting about the same, which is just, a total blessing. We're super excited about it. Because the roastery is sort of floating all the jobs in the for Onyx, and so our model has changed. We're I guess an e-commerce business now.
Yeah.
More so than we thought we would be, but we like to adapt, and change is good. So we're rolling with it,
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I have, I've been picking up because I haven't really gone to any locations except for the Greg Street location in Fayetteville to the walk up, but I have been picking up my Onyx coffee at Ozark Natural Foods. And I know that you guys have a brand new cafe going in there, if you will, at some point in time soon. And ONF is planning to open that new space. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together.
Yeah, it's really looking good. I haven't actually been on site since COVID struck, but the pictures I see, I think they're doing something special there.
Yeah, it's impressive, and I like everybody else that's listening to this, and just everybody in Northwest Arkansas and beyond. I'll certainly be glad when this is over, but it doesn't change the fact that we've all had to kind of do some introspection and kind of figure out if what we've been doing in the past is the right thing to do, or if there's a better way to do things. So I suspect just like so many other business owners, you guys are kind of going through that process now to figure out how you make a bigger, better Onyx Coffee Lab in the future compared to what it was prior to this whole pandemic.
Yeah, 100%. There are a lot of changes that we've made now that we think are positive, that will remain. We were sort of forced to pivot on some things, and now, after some clarity and some of the, at least, mad rush to change has subsided, we're sort of viewing it in a different light of, man, these are things we should have done, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it has forced us into some positive ideas, for sure. There'll be a lot of different service models, I think, that will continue even while this is over.
Okay. All right. And tell me, how did with the new location up in Rogers, downtown Rogers, which is absolutely beautiful, by the way. So people are being deprived of going into that space, but how did it affect the bakery aspect of the business? Are you guys still going strong with the bakeries? Because I certainly miss my blueberry muffins.
Yeah. It's not as busy as it was, but we've made up for some of the on-site pastry sales just through some catering, and we're doing like a bulk delivery for Onyx in the bakery, and so we're doing a lot more like breads and sourdoughs, baguettes, things like that.
Right.
But yeah, it has definitely hit on some of the finer pastries. We still sell them, through the walk-up window, but it's a little different than seeing a crystal case full of perfect laminated croissants. They don't quite move as quickly, obviously, when you have that. But it has been, in that aspect, that's another way it's sort of, we had not really focused on, we have a grain mill and focused on a bunch of artisanal breads. That was sort of in the long-term goal, but this has forced us into that. And so, yeah, we're learning all sorts of kind of like new menu items that we think we want to do, and we've been definitely eating a lot and playing with a lot of flavors as we use this time for a lot of R&D of what our food menu will look like when we reopen. So
Yeah. Wow, that's exciting. I can't wait to see what comes of all this. So with regard to the fact that you guys are not flying all over the world for obvious reasons, how does that impact your ability to connect with all of the, the prime growers of coffee that you normally interact with on a regular basis? Are you just kind of buying things on spec based on previous relationships, or what are you doing as far as that's concerned with the coffee?
yeah, that's probably been the hardest part. I mean, we're definitely in contact as far as just like WhatsApp phone calls and discussing coffees and working on contracts that way.
Mm-hmm.
It did hit sort of at towards the tail end of some of our buying contracts, and so luckily we had already been to Africa and had like cut through and picked most of those lots and got those containers on the water, which would have been the really hard part logistically if we couldn't have visited.
Yeah.
From the other stuff that's now in harvest, Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, some of those things, we've had some really long-term relationships, which has been nice. And so we're basically getting samples in the mail, cupping through sort of like hundreds of coffees, giving feedback, talking through techniques and processing. It's really it's a slower process, but it's actually working out all right now. We don't think we're going to have too many supply issues, other than coffee in general has been hit hard by COVID just from the origin standpoint. So
Right.
we, because we've had some good long-term relationships, and we sort of buy a bit more expensive coffees, we've been able to skirt by, but there's a real shortage in specialty coffee right now, and so times have become pretty tough. If you don't have something already contracted and a relationship with a grower, finding new sources have really dried up.
Yeah, I can imagine. The supply chain as a whole is a challenge, I think.
Yes, very much so. I mean, the ports obviously are backed up on both ends. We, have had to call and grease some wheels at certain countries to get coffee moving in priority. But yeah, it's just a lot of mailing samples back and forth, and then having real honest, good feedback with producers. And people talk about relationships and trust in business all the time, and this is one of those events that happen, and you really become thankful, and you understand why it's just so important that you wire six figures somewhere and hope the coffee shows up kind of situation. And all those meals you've had with their family or when they've visited, those things are how you're basing large financial transactions on now. And that's, in a way, it's kind of cool, it's almost like old school business.
Yeah, I guess there's certainly a little solace in that, and you said one thing that really stands out that I say all the time to people. I don't care whether you're in business or just in general, relationships are everything. If you don't have solid relationships, you've got some problems, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's true, and it's great perspective for us to be talking to our growers all the time. We've been kind of like posting we asked them to write letters sort of so our customer base can kind of gain some perspective on what's happening. And we've been posting them on social media from Ethiopia to Burundi to, Colombia and Guatemala. And it's really interesting to see the COVID impact at all these different communities. When it first struck, I was talking to one of our growers, which is in Huehue, Tenango, Danny Perez, and just kind of talking to him about coffee picking is a lot of labor, and asking where the community is going to come out and harvest, and how COVID was affecting. And his response was that no one was really worried about COVID because they were going to be more deaths from starvation in that community than from COVID, because no one is delivering food into the mountains.
Right.
And it just sort of like this crazy wake up call. It's just sort of like,
Well,
I don't know. It's just stories like that really help put some things into perspective during the lockdown,
Yeah, no, it has, and I think even here, I mean, the wake up call, and that is, and that's alarming when you hear that, because again, you think, oh, everybody's worried about COVID, but a lot of people are just worried about putting food on their table. And when you actually look at what we have seen, even just here in the last 2 months, the number of food insufficient people and households that have risen up here in Northwest Arkansas, even in a place that is as successful as we are, we've got our own challenges to overcome, and everybody, business owners and the like, are coming together to help with, like the NWA Food Bank and Tricycle Farms and so many others to make sure that people aren't going to bed hungry at night. And so I can only imagine what it's like in other countries.
Yeah, it's it definitely sheds some light on some things that maybe seemed hidden or were just hanging on by a thread,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure you guys are going to figure it out. And I guess my last question for you before I've taken up enough of your time, but what is it like living with a U.S. champion, a barista champion? I mean, what is that like? Congratulations, by the way.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. We were very excited. It's just yachts and Hollywood parties and champagne all day, and trying to fit in a massage here and there, and caviar and all the normal things that go with world champions.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that speaks volumes for you guys. Honestly, though, it's a great accomplishment on Andrea's behalf, and I'm going to share a link that I just read from Daily Coffee News about her championship back in February before this pandemic hit. So I guess it was kind of bittersweet, right? You win that, and then all of a sudden everything shuts down.
Yeah, it was, in a way. It's really become sort of a blessing in disguise, because it in a time when we need more PR and publicity to reach new audiences, and this is that time, and I think a lot of our growth in e-commerce has come from just a lot of good attention from national publications that are looking for, everyone's looking for content for their platforms right now, and competitive coffee scene is become interesting. And so, yeah, we've placed second 3 times before, and we always were, happy, but not sure what else to do. And it sort of feels like maybe the timing was just right, because it has really honestly helped us weather the storm by just getting so much promotion from so many different like non-coffee channels,
Yeah. No, I think, when we last aired your first episode, which was, and I'll go back and I'll mention it in the opening when I do the opening for this particular episode. But when we last talked, I think a lot of people, even in Northwest Arkansas, when they think of Onyx Coffee, they think of a local coffee place. A lot of people don't realize the reach that you guys have. And certainly things like this and your participation in those types of events, and just your relationships in all far-flung places of the world where great coffee is grown, it further cements the fact that there's a lot of good things happening here in Northwest Arkansas, in spite of everything else that's going on with the pandemic. And so you guys are certainly a beacon of hope for us. And I think another big thing that you guys are to be applauded for is that you haven't had to let anybody go during this process. So I think that, that's gotta help you, make you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, the area is been fantastic. I think there's just a lot of talent in the area that I think is really showcasing itself well. So
Right.
we're honored to be, we're honored to be here. So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, John, I really appreciate you just taking a few minutes out of your afternoon to chat with us for this bonus episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. We really appreciate you guys, and I certainly look forward to a time that I can get up there and do some cupping with you guys and enjoy a blueberry muffin, and we can look each other in the face and not be socially distant. So,
that sounds good, man. I'm ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So John Allen, thank you so much for taking the time to connect with me today. And I really appreciate it. You guys continue to do what you're doing. And folks, for those of you that aren't aware, Onyx Coffee is still open. You can still get food and some pastries and bakery stuff from their Rogers location. And can you get them at the other locations as well?
You can, yeah. We're still delivering out there.
Okay, so you have all that. What about Onyx ice cream? What about the ice cream? Have you put that on pause right now, or are you still doing that?
We are making it for some shakes at the stores, but we haven't been selling any pints or anything lately.
Yeah, that ice cream is to die for. And if anybody listening to this has never had the ice cream, when it is available, or if you do go to one of the locations and get one of the shakes, it's out of this world. I mean, it's that good. So I really encourage you to check it out. So
perfect. Thanks, friend.
Hey, no problem, buddy. Well, I appreciate you, man. And you guys keep fighting the good fight and keep making and producing and putting out some great coffee. And I think all of Northwest Arkansas appreciates you. We're rooting for you. And we also appreciate everything that you're doing for the larger community. So thank you very much, John. You and Andrea and your family take good care, and we'll be in touch real soon.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
Man, that was a great episode with John Allen. I really appreciate him coming on and spending a little bit of time with us. I hope you guys like that. I want to ask you to do me a favor. We are trying to grow our email list, and it would be really helpful if you guys could get on it. If you like the podcast, you like what I Am Northwest Arkansas represents, and you want to stay abreast of all the things that are happening here in the area. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can do that, of course, but if you just like what we're all about, I would be honored if you would just take a moment to sign up for our newsletter. We send out a weekly message every Friday. We give you an update on the previous week's podcast episode. We also share curated articles with you, as well as some additional information pertaining to Northwest Arkansas, or just things that might be helpful to you in general. I think you'd love the newsletter, and like I said, you can subscribe to it on our Facebook page at I Am Northwest Arkansas. You can subscribe to it on our website at iamnorthwestarkansas.com. And last but not least, I wanted to share with you a bit of information that I received online the other day. We got some really, really good feedback from folks, and we love reviews. And if you want to review the podcast, feel free to do so. Let us know what you think about it, and you can also write something. But here's a review that we got just this past week, and I thought I'd share it. And the title of the review is "The Source for Info on What Makes NWA Awesome." I first visited Northwest Arkansas in 1995 and moved here in 2004. I consider myself in the know of what's going on around town, whether it be in Fayetteville or Bentonville and parts in between. This podcast has brought things to light about NWA that I never knew. Whether your interests are the arts, philanthropy and service, Arkansas history, restaurants, or outdoor activities, this is the source for information. One of the boards that I serve on used this podcast series to illustrate what NWA is about to potential candidates and their spouses that live on the coast. This is a great resource for people from outside of the area, as well as those who have lived here for years. 5-star review. We really appreciate that 5-star review. Thank you so much for saying those kind words about the podcast. We're going to continue to do it. And honestly, this is the fuel for our fire. This is what keeps us going on a regular basis. So keep the reviews coming. Let us know what we can do to improve upon what we're already putting out. And we only want to continue to get better, right? It's that Japanese Kaizen approach to just consistent improvement on a regular basis. And we're doing it one episode at a time. Hope you like this bonus episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. We'll be out with another episode, as always, every Monday. Take care and make it a great day. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.